Out of any media franchise that I still have a profound love for as an adult, I don't think there's been one that I've had a longer history with than Mega Man. And I'd say this with no trace of hyperbole. Mega Man was the first franchise I remember not just enjoying, but becoming obsessed with at a very young age. I can't pin down the exact year that I was introduced to and began enjoying the character, but I know it was at least during preschool, as I have a very distinct memory of going there dressed as a homemade Mega Man for Halloween. My mom had repainted a costume army helmet for me. I do know, however, that my love for the series started with the Mega Man Anniversary Collection for Xbox, which my dad had brought home one night after work, as he had fond memories himself of playing the games as a kid on the NES and thought it would be a fun, nostalgic romp. These games are obviously nowhere near being accessible to a child, so I don't think I was able to beat a single stage of any game for the longest time. However, the small amount of time I did spend in them, as well as the cool little controllable Mega Man menu navigation, the loading screen art, the off-putting early 2000s CG Capcom logo intro where Gutsman has a white face and beady eyes for some reason, all drew me into the appeal of Mega Man initially. And hey, this collection did also include the arcade Mega Man games that I were actually able to play and beat at the time, as they're short, fairly easy, and have unlimited continues, as the original cabinets of course did not have. And I say both arcade games, but I actually didn't know how to unlock the second one for the longest time, so in reality the power battle was played on loop. Fast forward to present day, about 15 years later, where a 21-year-old Ty, still completely obsessed with this funky little blue guy, can enjoy these hard-ass games even more now that she can actually play and complete them. Not to brag, but I can beat all these games Buster only.
Just let me know when to pick up my trophy.
I have a massive appreciation for everything about these titles. The simple yet striking visuals, the challenging tight platforming, the almost puzzle-like weapon weakness system, the best music you've ever heard in a video game played on a fucking NES, all of it. Mega Man is the bomb. Not the blue bomber, though. I don't think anyone actually calls him that outside game journalists and normal boots era game reviewers anymore. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about these titles individually from a more critical perspective, how they all compare amongst each other, how their mechanics and overall presentation evolved as the series continued, and how my thoughts on the games compare to the larger fan opinion zeitgeist. I already had a pretty good idea of what people's general collective thoughts were on each of these games, what the universal favorites and least favorites were amongst Mega Man fans overall, but just to roughly check that preconception, I tweeted out a quick poll just to get some rough data from a small sample size. And yeah, the results were essentially what I expected them to be. Mega Man 2 was the most well-liked. No surprise there. Mega Man 1 was the least liked. Yeah, it aged the worst out of all of them. And Mega Man 8, the one often called the black sheep of the series that you probably know by its funny cutscenes.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy.
Was right up there with Mega Man 1. Well, next to Mega Man and Bass, which I honestly regret including in the poll, as its inclusion in the mainline classic series is a bit contestable. It's not a numbered game, and essentially acts as a spin-off of sorts from 8 that was made for the SNES. It's also the only one out of this list that I haven't played yet, so yeah, I really don't know why I included it. But my point here is that even today, Mega Man 8 seems to have maintained its position as the universally least liked of all the sequels. Why is that? Well, a lot of things. I think the game's strange identity started almost right at its initial conception, as this was Mega Man's first venture outside its Nintendo console exclusive roots and into brand new 32-bit hardware. However, it continued to remain a sprite-based 2D side-scroller without any jump at all to the fancy new 3D that the hardware now allowed, unlike the first title of the spin-off series Mega Man Legends that was being developed at the time. This is not at all a bad thing, but in Mega Man 8's case, I feel it contributed to almost an overcompensation of sorts when it came to its identity. This couldn't just end up being another safe, by-the-book classic Mega Man sequel. It had to prove itself as a brand new, modern take on the series. However, what resulted was a game that feels like it's trying to experiment and push outside what the series had been in spirit up to that point, without really being able to in any large, broad strokes way, resulting in a clash of sorts. To a lot of fans, it just felt off. It was Mega Man, but in a way that didn't feel very Mega Man-y, for lack of better phrasing. The most apparent deviation from past titles was that of its visuals. We had already seen an upgrade from 8-bit to 16-bit with Mega Man 7 on the SNES, and all things considered, it was a pretty smooth transition. The larger sprites, higher color limit, and, all the other technological come on, I'm not very smart, were utilized to maintain that chunky, cartoony, cutesy Mega Man art style, just now more expressive, more colorful, and slightly more detailed. It definitely had its own style and personality, one that is praised quite often, but also one that managed to retain the spirit and energy of Mega Man overall. Mega Man 8, though, was different. There was a larger shift in art direction here. Not at all a bad one, just one set to a different angle. And the obvious change was in the character designs. Mega Man was no longer the tiny baby, the little dude. He was an adult, or teenager. But, also not, though, I guess. This was the direction the X series was already going in with its more serious, slick vibe, so I think they wanted to apply that same quote-unquote modernization to the character designs of the classic series as well. Mega Man couldn't look like this in them, he had to look like a cool guy. This is modern Mega Man now. However, that's already what Mega Man X was for. It was a faster, more agile, slightly more serious take on Mega Man, purposely split into its own series. In my opinion, classic Mega Man is meant to be the cuter, more lighthearted series, not necessarily in plot or tone, just more so in art style and presentation. Come on, look at the sleepy heat, man. Classic Mega Man is still slick and cool as fuck though, don't get me wrong. But it's in the same way that Toon Link is cool, He's a kid who's cute and a little silly, but determined, skilled, and has a bunch of rad weapons and powers at his disposal. All that being said, this character design choice was at most just unnecessary and slightly distracting. This game is still closer in tone to the classic series than that of the X series, at least in its gameplay, and the characters don't look bad, just a little excessive for what a classic Mega Man game should be in my opinion. And I think this definitely contributed to that clashy feel I was talking about. The plot is where this game does actually try to take itself a little more seriously than usual. There's some cosmic space bullshit, this new mysterious character named Duo, some evil dark energy or something. I don't really know or care at all, to be honest. The story in the Mega Man games has honestly never been something I've had very much investment in. They at least tried something different here, even though it's incredibly boring to me. Well, the story itself, actually. The way it's presented is a completely different story. Okay, yeah, time to talk about the cutscenes now. There it is. There we go.
Mega Man, today we finish this.
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
Shut up!
Gaming fact incoming, the English voice acting in this game is bad and funny. Yeah, this is the game's most notorious aspect, even ending up outside the Mega Man community due to how meme-worthy it was. The voice cast was full of non-native English speakers who tried their best, but struggled with the pronunciation of English words and overall gave humorously stilted performances. This is not the first time this has happened with a game, but this is definitely one of the most entertaining examples of it.
Cannot let it fall into Dr. Wowie's hands. You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
But if anyone discussing this game is legitimately counting this as a point against the game overall, they're either taking themselves way too seriously as a human being or just straight up lying to you. Look me in the eyes and tell me that these clips genuinely make this game less enjoyable. It's like saying the Nintendo CDI games or The Room would have genuinely benefited or made a better impact on the world from better acting performances. Come on, be real with me. These are beyond iconic. Mega Man 11 has objectively more competent and talented voice acting, and I would honestly pick 8's over it any day. At least it's entertaining and has personality.
Otto, do you have any idea where Wily's gone to? He's totally vanished, Mega Buddy!
Everyone goes hog wild over the cutscenes, but I think the in-game voice acting deserves just as much attention.
I'm Swordsman.
Mega Man, Wily, and all the Robot Masters have slight voice acting during gameplay for the first time here, and they are something special. A lot of these are almost Super Fighter M level. They're so good.
Your plan is terribly terrible.
Say hello to my cute bombs.
I'm not gonna be too gentle with you.
Are you worthy of my challenge?
It is normal for the weak to be eliminated.
Nothing personal, but I've got orders.
Wanna taste my venom?
I'll crush crush you. I will beat you.
Come and taste the bullets.
I'm Aquaman, but you can call me Handsome Guy.
The explosion is an art.
Explosion is art!
Oh wait, as far as the look of the actual game itself, it's very apparent from the very first second that there was a lot of visual ambition this time around, of course spawned from what the PlayStation and Saturn both allowed now. Opinions in the overall look of the game is all over the place from what I can tell. Whether the whole package works for you or not just kind of depends on what tickles your fancy, I suppose, but just looking at it from a technical level, anyone can see that they were able to utilize this new hardware in some pretty impressive ways for its 2D pixel art. Everything looks more like it exists in a 3D space this time without actually being so, especially with this new, I guess, semi-isometric view. I don't know if there's an actual term for this, let me know if there is. As well as this, all the sprites are incredibly detailed, everything is animated to hell and back, and the backgrounds have more complex parallaxing, sometimes to the point of actually being distracting. There is a definite increase in scope here. I'll delve more into how the game looks later on, but for now I'll focus specifically on how all these changes affected the gameplay itself. And this is where I think a majority of people's criticisms of the game stem from, myself included. You see, it's often said that the controls and movement in Mega Man 8 are the worst out of any classic Mega Man, well, 2 through 11 at least, due to feeling a lot slower and more sluggish than the others. And yeah, I definitely have to agree here. In fact, I'd say this is hands down 8's worst aspect. There's a lot of factors contributing to that, but I think most of it comes down to the game's new visual flair weighing down the actual gameplay in a lot of ways. As I mentioned a while ago, Mega Man 7 made the choice of upping the tile and sprite sizes, including Mega Man, in order to squeeze the most detail and expression out of the new 16-bit look as they could, which worked wondrously in making the game look as appealing as it does. I love how much more expressive all the characters and enemies look, it's adorable. However, this also unfortunately meant less space left on the screen now, as everything is tighter packed. The difference might look subtle, but because the Mega Man games are based around incredibly tight and precise platforming to begin with, you definitely feel it while playing. These stages feel a bit claustrophobic comparatively, meaning a smaller room for error, oftentimes literally. Mega Man himself also feels a tiny bit slower in all his movements from the NES titles, and it's actually difficult to tell if this is because of an actual mechanical speed decrease, perhaps to account for the reduced screen real estate, or if it's the added frames in his running and jumping animations causing it to feel more sluggish to the player, or could be a combination of both. I legitimately have a difficult time telling where that line is. It can be kind of difficult to gauge jumping distances at times in 7, especially to those who are really used to the old games, both because Mega Man's sprite is now larger, and also because there's some brief transitional frames from the standing to jumping pose that can make it a slight amount less clear when he's actually leaving the ground compared to the instant snappy pose changes in the 8-bit titles. I've had many moments in this game where, due to Mega Man's size, I slightly underestimate the distance I've given myself while jumping over a gap and end up missing the ledge by a tiny amount. It's a bit frustrating. Not to mention the charge for the charge shot also happens to be the slowest so far, which definitely doesn't help the draggy feeling of this game. These things definitely don't ruin Mega Man 7 though. The game is still super fun and feels overall pretty faithful to the NES games, all things considered. It can just be a little annoying and hard to get used to. Now, pretty much all of these exact problems are also carried over to 8, as the larger sprite size and slow buster charge remains. But the overall sluggishness is now way worse this time around. The sprite size issue is just a smidge better, the aspect ratio has been widened, and Mega Man himself and most enemies are sized down a little bit, meaning it's technically less cramped than 7. However, this doesn't do shit in terms of making the game feel better, as way more problems have been introduced than fixed. For running and jumping, I once again have a difficult time telling where the mechanical differences end and the animation game feel begins. I want to say the speed is legitimately slower even from 7, but I could be wrong. What I do know, however, is that these new animations take a gigantic toll on the feeling of movement. As I mentioned, this game went absolutely ballistic on its sprite animation, and that holds true for Mega Man himself as well. The frame count here here is now through the roof. I have to say, this does make some incredibly visually appealing movements. Just looking at the squishy motions they gave Mega Man here is an absolute joy. The body twist and pumping of his fist in his run cycle, the squash and stretch in the arm cannon when firing buster shots, the way he rises and falls into and out of the dynamic jump pose, it's so full of life and looks gorgeous. However, in an actual gameplay setting, your character's movement is more than just something pretty to look at. It more importantly serves as visual feedback for your controller inputs. And when these longer, fluid motions are linked to the button presses you're using to move the character around on screen, it results in something that feels like molasses to control, almost to a painful extent. And this is a Mega Man game. If there's any gameplay style that's able to get away with that sort of thing, it is definitely not a precision platformer series like this. Although it's difficult to tell if the gunky running and jumping movements are a result of actual speed differences or animation, I can tell you that Mega Man's slide has definitely been altered for this game. They added this small getting up animation that completely halts you for a moment before you're allowed to move again, which can be jumped out of, but it just sucks. Sliding does technically cover more distance in a shorter amount of time than simply running does, but the amount feels so small and unsatisfying here that it's almost not even worth using outside moments where you're forced to. All the sliding I do while playing is just pure habit carried over from the other games. If I didn't have that ingrained in my soul from how much Mega Man I've played over the years, I probably would not even bother using it most of the time. Funnily enough, you have the option to buy an upgrade in the part shop that increases the speed and distance of your slide, making the move actually useful and fun again. I'm not sure if they intentionally handicapped the slide so they can sell it back to you as an upgrade, but it's a possibility. In fact, there's a lot of various upgrades in 8's new part shop that can help you make the game a little easier if Mega Man's controls make the game too frustrating for you. No, they don't fix any of the specific issues I just mentioned, aside from the slide and one upgrade that can make your buster charge quicker. Mega Man 8's actual platforming will still feel sluggish and slow at the end of the day, regardless of what fancy things you add on top, but there are a lot of different things here that can at least make the game easier in other ways, like removing recoil from taking damage, increasing weapon energy intake, refilling spare bodies when you exit a stage. And even some pretty cool alternate charge shots, like this powerful laser shot, the splitting arrow shot, and this machine gun shot. These are all purchased using these big bolts that act as secret collectibles in the levels, counting to 40 in total in the game that can be found by exploring the stages, doing tight platforming in certain areas, or using specific Robot Master weapons to access them. I do honestly like this aspect of the game. It can be fun to track down these bolts in order to make Mega Man more powerful. However, I would have much preferred if they had used all this energy and time they put into adding all the extra frivolous upgrades into making Mega Man feel better to control at base level, but you know, the arrow shot is pretty cool. The final large component that makes up 8's weak nature is that of its actual level design. This is what I'd say is the most experimental part of the game compared to the other titles. Mega Man 8 is chock full of new and unique ideas for the series, and I have to commend them for that, but this huge emphasis on experimentation also took the game further away from Mega Man's core identity, as well as just straight up being poorly executed at many points. The game tried a lot of new things with its various stage hazards, enemies, and gimmicks, and ended up with a selection that's very hit or miss due to how all over the place it is. There are actually well implemented and fun ones that are clever in concept but not utilized well, ones that are just dumb and terrible all over. Yeah, Mega Man 8's game design is a big old grab bag of quality. The parts that I hate the most are ones like this button door maze thing in Astro Man stage that should not be in a game like this at all. Why would you ever think to put a maze in a Mega Man game? Absolutely no one is asking for that. And this stupid fucking half of Swordman stage that tries to be a pseudo Zelda dungeon or something. These really unfun quote-unquote puzzles that force you to use the Robot Master weapons. Also, for a Mega Man game that's as sluggish as this is, it sure does love its tight window-timed platforming segments. Tons of Mega Man titles contain those, but 8 just insists upon them. Despite all those stinkers, the game does also contain plenty of genuinely inventive mechanics that have a lot of potential. The reason you never really hear anyone praise these ones, though, is because, good mechanic or bad, you're hardly given any time to even experience them in the first place due to how quickly this game disposes of its ideas. To me, the Mega Man series really started to get its shit together in terms of its approach to level design in 9 and 10, and all but perfected it in 11. This is not my favorite one, but from a pure level design perspective, I feel it's the most comprehensive of all the classic Mega Mans. They nailed this formula here. If you're at all familiar with the way many Mario levels tend to be designed, then you've probably at least heard of its 4-step level structure, where an idea is introduced, iterated further, increased in difficulty or complexity, and then given a twist all over the course of a single level. This is a great way of 1. Teaching the mechanic to you, 2. Getting as much interesting and fun gameplay as you can out of said mechanic, and 3. Keeping it from going stale. A very similar philosophy is used for Mega Man 11's level design as well, although in a different way, as Mega Man levels tend to be a lot longer and have a lot more mechanics in them than a short Mario level. Each stage in the game has its own handful of enemies, hazards, and general stage elements that all have their own respective iterative arcs, almost like there's multiple short Mario levels packed into one Mega Man level. However, these are all spaced out and interwoven amongst each other to form the flow of the level. Each mechanic trades off between each other in each subsequent screen, while still being iterated upon each time you see them. Eventually, these elements will start combining and being used together in the same rooms, which gives them all a challenging twist and wraps up the level's various mechanic arcs in a nice thematic way. This whole formula means that you won't get bored with any particular mechanic, as they're spaced out to give a varied flow, while also ensuring that each one is explored to a satisfying and interesting degree. In fact, most of these mechanics are given even more iteration outside their stages when you reach Wily's Fortress at the end of the game, which combines old mechanics with a few new ones to test you on everything you've encountered thus far, while still giving you interesting spins on each of them. Most of the Mega Man games use this overall design philosophy to some extent, but 11 is where it was done best. They really refined the framework for how a Mega Man game should be designed, in my opinion. That was all a very quick and simplified explanation, so if you want the structure of Mega Man 11's design explained more thoroughly, I highly recommend you check out this amazing video by GMTK's Mark Brown. Now, I say all this to directly compare and put into perspective Mega Man 8's level design, because although it kind of tries to structure its stages like this, sometimes, most of the time, it just does whatever it feels like at any given moment. Don't get me wrong, there are many mechanics that are indeed cleverly developed, at least in some form. These bomb blocks in Grenade Man stage that explode when you shoot them, these disappearing platforms in Astro Man stage, and these lava button platforms in Sword Man stage are some examples of stage gimmicks that are introduced, iterated upon, and given an interesting twist in a nice cohesive way. However, whenever this is done in 8, it's very rare that it's spaced out among other stage gimmicks or even kept relevant for longer than a couple of screens or segments. While 11 splits the arcs into chunks, spreads them throughout the level, and combines them with other mechanics towards the end, 8 gets it all over with pretty quickly in a direct sequence, only ever separated super briefly and then dropped for entirely different mechanics for the rest of the stage. And that's just if the stage gimmick is lucky enough to get any sort of development or growth. There's a pretty good amount of them that appear in only one small screen or room and then are never seen for the rest of the game. There's these breakable palm tree platforms and these chain pulley platforms in the opening stage, these giant breakable and falling blocks in Grenade Man stage, these toys that obscure the floor, and these elevator skull things in Clown Man stage, these platforms that move in and out of the wall in Astro Man stage, like I mentioned, these dumb fucking puzzle things in Sword Man stage, oh my god, these bigger versions of the explodey blocks from earlier that appear for like literally 5 seconds in Wily stage 2, and this single variant of the gorilla enemy seen in Search Man stage that throws a boulder onto these spikes for you to jump on once in Wily stage 3. A lot of these elements are genuinely interesting and full of potential too. It's very strange why they spent so much time creating and implementing all these in the first place if they weren't going to utilize their full potential. All this leaves the game with some pretty messy and unfocused stages, especially for how short they are, and because of that, they can each feel a little bit like a blur overall, outside their themes, boss fights, and a few standout gimmicks. This isn't to say that a more rapid-fire, theme park ride-paced design philosophy is a bad form of game design. Definitely not. There are plenty of platformers that harness that energy and do it really well. The reason Mega Man 8 feels so strange for it is both because it's not executed that well overall in game comparatively, but also because that's just not how these games roll. While a series like Mario is able to try wildly new concepts and structures from mainline title to mainline title and still manage to embody the feeling of Mario, classic Mega Man kind of can't, simply due to how much of a rigidly structured and formulaic series it is to begin with, something that was established way back in the first 2 games. If you begin to stray too far from its core, it starts to either fall apart pretty quickly or simply transforms into something that isn't classic Mega Man. That's just kind of the nature of the series. And I think that's why many elements of the game either fell flat or felt misplaced. It almost feels like it wanted to take Mega Man in a larger scoped, more drastically different direction than its classic formula really allowed it to. So rather than changing that formula from the get-go, it instead tried its hardest to messily force all of that into its confines. To be honest, I think this game might have fared a lot better if they utilized the freedom a brand new spin-off title would have allowed, instead of packaging it as another numbered Mega Man installment. I mean, that's essentially what the other spin-off series did, and it worked. Instead, what we were left with was an incredibly unique installment in the series, one filled to the brim with artistic detail, innovative concepts, and a larger scope, but because of its misplaced ambition and haphazard execution, a pretty damn weak one. Which is all going to make it a bit strange for me to say that this is my favorite Mega Man game. Yeah, I'm not joking. From a more objective view, I do think that Mega Man 8 is the worst, or second worst in the mainline classic series, but my heart wants what it wants, and I fucking adore this game. I was kind of holding off on talking positives throughout most of the video, and that's just so I could have a chance to absolutely gush about why this game makes me so happy here at the end. Sorry to bury the lead. Mega Man 8 oozes charm from every crevice of its being. For me, its poorly designed elements and the frustrating moments that result from them are smothered out by a sea of colorful, juicy, late 90s PlayStation appeal. Whenever I experience an unfair death from a failed dogshit slide dodge, or because of these dumb jumpy pit guys that appear from nowhere and knock you down into the dark abyss, it only takes about a couple of seconds for me to see those little blue cubes spell out ready and fly apart to reveal this incredible entrance animation for me to go, yeah, I don't give a shit. This game is amazing. The overall presentation is absolutely 8's strongest element. Yeah, viewed through a does it feel like Mega Man lens, it doesn't fare as well for a lot of people as I've gone into, but on its own, it's just an appealing ass game with an immaculate vibe. This shit is fucking gorgeous. Just look. The absurd amount of visual detail and overall polish in this thing is absolutely insane. Look at these little robotic bird flocks that were made just for the opening stage. Look at this adorable little Met walk cycle. Look at how extra they made these brief UI warning graphics. Look at all these cracks and craters in the stone here. Look, they managed to make worms look elegant. Okay, here, I'm going to list the amount of tiny designated action animations they gave to a one-shot kill disposable toy soldier enemy that appears in a couple of rooms in one stage out of the entire game. One that you'll likely only spend maybe 3 minutes on screen with overall. Jumping out of their spawning capsule. Walking. Latching onto Mega Man from the front. Latching onto Mega Man from the back. Being thrown off of Mega Man from the front. Being thrown off of Mega Man from the back, tripping over a ledge, hanging onto the ledge for dear life, trying to pull each other up from the ledge, falling from the ledge, cartoonishly trying to stay afloat midair, landing on the ground, flattening themselves by accidentally bumping into a wall, and being sent into space from the gust of a tornado hold. Yeah, this stuff is beyond excessive, but god is it amazing. The amount of time they must have spent on all this pixel art is so insane that I really hope there wasn't any kind of horrible crunch or workers' rights violations involved in the development of this game. Yeah, let's not think about that right now. The sound design, oh my gosh, the sound design. All the little movement sounds Mega Man makes, like shooting, jumping, landing, are adorable. The buster hits are really punchy and satisfying, as well as the explosion sounds. The noises for refilling weapon and health energy are really juicy. God, even the UI noises itch my brain just right. And the music, hands down my favorite part of Mega Man 8. It definitely has an almost completely different vibe from the other soundtracks, but it is not in the slightest a bad thing here. I'm not even going to try to explain why I love it so much. I'm just going to play some for you. Also, if you've played this game, then you probably know how iconic that trumpet sample is. It shows up in a lot of tracks and never gets old. Oh my god, and this intro song that's exclusive to the Japanese version called Electric Communication, go listen to it. It's the most 90s thing ever. It gets me grinning from ear to ear. In fact, if there's anything that I want you to come away with from this video, it's that you should go listen to the soundtrack, even if you don't play the game itself. I highly recommend it. Despite all the many problems I have with 8's design and gameplay itself as well, it doesn't stop me from finding the game still fun anyways. Maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's because I've played it so many times that I've learned to look past its many problems, or maybe I just have a freakish little brain, I don't know. I love these flying sections in Tengu Man Stage and Wily Stage 2. They're a really exciting change of pace and act as a really rad set piece. I love how you can open these party balls and summon Beat, Eddie, and Otto to help you out. It's so cute. I love the little mechanic in Clown Man Stage with these symbol platforms where if you're standing on each type when the little toy guy in the background rings his bell, you'll either be hurt or dropped through. It's a really clever mechanic. I wish I got to see it more. Not the mystery door section maze part though. The game could definitely do without that. Although you can skip most of it with the Mega Ball anyways. Oh yeah, I haven't mentioned the Mega Ball thus far. It's a pretty strange inclusion in the game, all things considered, as its only required use is one awful boss fight towards the end of the game, despite that its introduction in the opening stage makes it seem like it's going to be a central mechanic or something, but it's actually an incredibly useful item. It's not taught to you in any way for some reason, but you can jump off these, making it essentially the replacement for Rush Coil in this game, kind of. But the fun part is that you can actually Mega Ball jump mid-air as well, as many times consecutively as your weapon energy allows, in fact. Yeah, this thing is utilized quite a bit in speedruns, as you can imagine. It's great. Oh yeah, and guess what else is here? The fucking Rush Bike, baby. I didn't ever really find a use for it, but you know what? I'm glad it's here. Step aside, Shadow of Hedge and Legend of Zelda, Meg of Man did it first. Speaking of writing things, I gotta come clean. I like the snowboard sections. I don't know, I like the challenge and excitement, and they're iconic, what can I say? One part of Mega Man 8's gameplay that I think is just straight up actually good are the Robot Master fights. They're super imaginative and are honestly some of the most tame fights in the series in terms of difficulty. You got Tengu Man floating around the arena like Phantom Ganon, you got Sword Man splitting himself in half as an attack, you got Grenade Man blowing up the floor and dropping you to a lower section to finish the fight. It's some cool shit. And I've waited talking about him long enough. Clown Man is the best damn thing to ever happen to the Mega Man series. Changed my fucking mind.
I'm Clown Man.
Look at his design, just look at him. He's phenomenal. In some alternate universe, this dude definitely became a Tumblr sexy man, alright? Also, his voice lines, oh my god.
Yo, geeky. Weakling, this isn't a joking matter. I'll make you join my man.
Actual gold. There is not enough fan art of this guy. I am begging y'all, please draw him. I could honestly ramble about my admiration for this game forever, so I'll go ahead and spare you now. I know that structuring a video by talking shit on a game for like 2/3 of the runtime and then suddenly revealing that I adore it at the very end is a bit strange, but I'm devilish like that. I'm mischievous like that.
Mega Man
Oh, she hates this one. She hates this game.
Again, one of my favorite games of all time.
Really, I just love the game so much that even talking about its worst elements is still exciting for me. Even separated from my opinions or feelings of the game, I just think it's an interesting chapter in the life of classic Mega Man regardless, and talking about its perception and lineage is a fun topic to discuss. I don't really have any profound statement to conclude this all with, aside from, hey, if you've never played Mega Man 8 and something about it jumped out at you in this video, I'd say go play it. You can obviously emulate
completely legally,
but it's also on the second Legacy Collection, which is the most accessible way to purchase it right now. It's on the older Anniversary Collection for GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, although this is 100% the version I'd recommend the least, as it's a legitimately broken port, complete with sprite glitching and audio that layers over itself. Take it from someone who has been playing it this way for a decade, it sucks. And of course, you can try and track down an original PS1 copy, or if you have a Saturn and are able to get your hands on its version, you get to play the best version of all, that has 2 extra optional boss fights with Cutman and Woodman, which I have never been able to experience myself, and I'm salty about it. Both the Anniversary and Legacy collections only have the objectively inferior version for some reason. They didn't even include a menu option to just play the extra boss fights. It's disappointing. Even if the game ends up not being your thing, I still think there's a lot to enjoy here. Hell, if you aren't up to actually playing it, watch a playthrough of it and experience its prettiness there. Obviously not the same experience, but hey, your call. Also, if you're someone who has played the game and just can't get past the frustration of its sluggish controls, I'd recommend checking out a fan remake of the game called Rockman 8 Famicom. This person remade both 7 and 8 in the NES Famicom Mega Man style, and they're incredibly cool. Mega Man's movement is perfectly in line with the old ones and feels way better to control here. 8's in particular may end up actually being more frustrating for you in the long run though, despite the fixed controls, as the game was made a lot harder for some reason.
The falling Mo I have.
I think it's a really neat fan game to check out regardless. Remake fan games like this are always a treat to see. And if you're one of the others out there who loves Mega Man 8 like me, one of my few siblings who's able to love the game despite its flaws, thank you for keeping the spirit alive. I salute you.
See you in my dreams.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. This is definitely a new type of video for me, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'm happy to talk about a game I have a lot of passion for. If you liked this more video essay-y type of format, let me know. There's other topics in media I'd love to do deep dives or critical analyses on, so tell me if you'd like more of that sort of thing. Or if you didn't care for it, you can kindly tell me that as well. And I'd like to thank my Skrunklies over on Patreon. Thank you for supporting me. Spider-Bee, Goose Nerd, Just a Penguin, Equinox Music, Jewy, Prism, April B, Creative JK, Adelaide Parade, Malin, Soy Sauce Flavored Tide Pod, Galaxy, Chico Mode, Addie Fields, Catterall, Puliver, Schmooms, Blargensnorf, Frigid Duck, Zealous, Rubbish Bunny, Caleb Hochsterfer, The Siderian, Goji Dragon, Awesome AC, Xenodude Face, Melody May, Wunga, Red Mustache Alien, Jam Toast, Lily Swartzlander, and Jenny. If you'd like to join these wonderful folks, you can check out my Patreon in the link in the description. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and peace out.
if you give a ghoul a grubby, you give a grub a